Godzilla vs. Gigan from 1972 is one of the most classic Godzilla films ever made. The movie is oozing with that vintage Godzilla charm that has defined the Showa series for so many, while still managing to capture the spirit of the original, more serious Showa films. The movie is a fan favorite, and for good reason. It's awesome. It's charming and exciting and features great action, exciting kaiju, and a super fun human plotline. In the lead up to Godzilla King of the Monsters, O'Shea Jackson Jr., who plays Barnes in that film, often spoke about his connection to Godzilla vs. Gigan. Interestingly, he cites a reason for why it's such a favorite of his that seems to have been overlooked by so many people. And that reason is that it was the very first time since Godzilla became a hero that you could truly believe he might actually lose and Earth might be destroyed. But what is it about Godzilla vs. Gigan that had such high stakes compared to the other films, and why was it such a big part of that film's success? The movie begins on Monster Island with the King of the Monsters. By this time, Godzilla had already undergone his complete transformation from an apocalyptic symbol of the horrors of war to a full-blown superhero and defender of children. Starting on Godzilla should be a positive note, but a strange and powerful ominous rumble overwhelms the viewer and immediately establishes a darker tone for this movie than for the rest of Jun Fukuda's Godzilla films. The intro sequence continues the trend with menacing and abrupt sound effects, later revealed to be the sounds of Gigan, and strange technology, which must have looked quite futuristic for the 70s, establishing a powerful high-tech alien presence. As the film begins, and even before we learn their evil, the Children's Land directors reveal themselves as a dangerous threat to Godzilla, our hero. We learn that the Children's Land directors plan to kill Godzilla and destroy Monster Island along with all the kaiju as part of a plan to create world peace. As they explain their plan, we see how calm and tranquil the monsters on Monster Island are when left alone. From one of the first times ever, the monsters come across as unknowing victims and are instantly sympathetic. Another major asset that helps this movie feel as heavy and dangerous as it does is the use of Akira Ifukube's music. Despite this being a Jun Fukuda film, lighter music like the works of Masaru Sato are traded in for the haunting and weighty themes of Akira Ifukube. Despite being a soundtrack of completely recycled works, the music picked for Godzilla vs. Gigan is incredibly consistent and works together to round out one of the more grand and terrifying Ifukube soundtracks. Godzilla vs. Gigan has no identity crisis about who it's trying to appeal to either. By this point in Toho's history, they were reliant on a younger crowd coming in to see Godzilla films to keep them afloat. While producer Tomoyuki Tanaka wanted to move away from the bizarre style of Godzilla vs. Hedorah, he wasn't trying to abandon the younger demographic. That's why this movie plays so well for younger viewers while not feeling like it was made for kids. This is an undeniable factor in the film's successful legacy. The younger you are when you first experience this movie, the more engaged with it you'll be and the more memorable it becomes. One of the elements of this film that was definitely geared toward the younger viewers was the comic book style that is present occasionally in the film. The most striking use of this is when Godzilla and Anguirus speak to one another using speech bubbles. In the English dub, they straight up speak English. This is one of the sillier elements of the movie and doesn't work very well, but it does establish immediately for younger viewers that Godzilla is actually quite concerned about what's going on. As he hears the action tape, he expresses verbal concern to Anguirus over the situation. As a kid, it's instantly terrifying to see Godzilla, the king of the monsters, get worried about something. This is reiterated later in the movie when the military reveals Godzilla has escaped confinement with Anguirus on Monster Island, something he wouldn't do unless he felt threatened. Then we arrive at Gigan himself. Gigan's introduction is awesome. First, we see two strange objects flying through space towards Earth, and if you've followed the Showa series up to this point, you'd know that Godzilla's most fearsome opponents always come from space, making this a pretty big challenge for him. Then we learn that one of those opponents is King Ghidorah, the only kaiju we've ever been told Godzilla stands no chance of defeating without help. So then, when Gigan is revealed, hope seems lost, as Godzilla and Anguirus will be outgunned. Even though the fight will be a 2v2, it still feels stacked against Godzilla. This is aided by Gigan's incredible design. The work of illustrator Takayoshi Mizuki. Gigan has the single most outwardly threatening kaiju design ever created as of 1972. Gigan shows off his capabilities during a fantastic destruction sequence in which he gets to use his most powerful weapons. It's an exciting scene, and although overly reliant on stock footage, it's one of the few true city destruction sequences we've gotten in a Godzilla film aside from Destroy All Monsters since 1965. Even when Godzilla does show up, the aliens are pleased and reveal that this is part part of their plan, making things feel even more hopeless. As the fight kicks off, the audience's fears are confirmed, and Godzilla and Anguirus are quickly overpowered in the factory fight. The final battle spills over into Children's Land, all part of the aliens' plan, and Godzilla is completely on the defensive. The film reaches its peak here, as Godzilla is sliced open by Gigan, and blood gushes out for the first time ever. Especially as a kid, this was an incredible thing to witness. After 10 films of watching this Godzilla kick ass and be an indestructible badass, this seems completely impossible, and cements Gigan as a legendary opponent. Even the Godzilla suit, being in disrepair and deterioration by this point after 4 years and as many films of use, makes Godzilla come across even more weak and even more outmatched here. Just then things go from bad to worse, as the Godzilla Tower unleashes its firepower on Godzilla and obliterates him, draining him of all his energy and taking him to the ground. Now Godzilla is truly outnumbered. Anguirus, who has been clearly outmatched the entire fight, then makes an attempt to take on Gigan, only to get his face split open by the kaiju's buzzsaw, spraying blood all over the camera. A really intense visual for a film aimed at such young audiences. Then, for the first time ever, the heroic Godzilla truly and thoroughly loses a fight. While Godzilla suffered minor defeats at the hands of Hedorah, nothing ever felt as grim or definitive as this. In that film, Godzilla was often getting stopped or trapped rather than fully crippled. It isn't until the humans blow up Godzilla Tower's control room that Godzilla is able to stand a chance, but even then, he's nearly hopeless. With Ghidorah and Gigan's personalities now taking hold after their mind control is worn off, Godzilla catches a bit of a break. After Gigan puts a biblical bloody smackdown on an already exhausted and defeated Godzilla, the villainous kaiju celebrate their victory. The visual of Godzilla crumpled on the ground in front of these two villains, mocking him, is sure to linger in the minds of all the younger viewers watching this film. It's here where Godzilla finally gets a lucky break as Ghidorah's ego gets in the way and he launches Godzilla into the remains of Godzilla Tower, allowing Godzilla to destroy its remains and regain his strength. It's this moment that Godzilla and Anguirus are able to retaliate and drive out the invaders one at a time, first exposing Gigan for the coward he is and causing him to retreat, and then turning their attention to King Ghidorah and teaming up using a bunch of awesome combo moves to take him down. The thing that makes Godzilla's triumph so memorable in this movie is that he had to struggle to earn it. Godzilla and Anguirus' comeback is all the more rewarding because of the pain they endured to achieve it. It makes their victory feel like a true accomplishment. This is a crucial aspect of any good story that is so often overlooked when dealing with Godzilla. Too many times filmmakers seem overly concerned with insecure Godzilla fans' backlash over having Godzilla struggle. This is an issue that's currently plaguing the MonsterVerse and is deflating the stakes of their stories. By amplifying Godzilla's strength and showing how unstoppable he is in every circumstance, there's no sense of accomplishment. Godzilla's victory over Kong is incredibly shallow because the film never gives the audience a reason to believe Godzilla will actually lose the fight. This makes his loss to Mechagodzilla a baffling move, considering how invincible Godzilla's been since the final battle in Godzilla King of the Monsters. Without using outside sources, the film provides no reason for Godzilla's loss here. Things get even worse in Godzilla Kong: The New Empire, as the movie tells the viewer that Godzilla defeated Scar King single-handedly before the villain is even properly introduced. By the time Scar King shows up, we already know he's going to lose miserably to Godzilla, who's now supercharged and stronger than the last time he was when he took Scar King on. It's such a sloppy and wild story decision because it undermines every single thing that happens for the rest of the entire film. Rather than having a sense of fear that maybe Godzilla and Kong aren't going to be enough to take down Scar King and Shimo, you're just left waiting for them to finish it off already. A more compelling conflict would have been to reveal Scar King had defeated Godzilla long ago and driven him out of Hollow-Earth. This makes Scar King instantly menacing and puts a whole new level of fear upon the viewer as Kong approaches his kingdom. If Kong wasn't enough to stop Godzilla, he surely won't be enough to stop Scar King. This also makes Godzilla's mission to supercharge completely understandable, as we now know his original form isn't strong enough to get the job done. Another film that nails this concept is Godzilla 2014, a movie where Godzilla is outmatched by the Mutos because they're literally designed to feast upon him and they outnumber him. It's aided by the fact that we didn't know if there would be any sequels. I remember truly being on the edge of my seat during that movie, genuinely worried that Godzilla would succumb to his wounds and die in the streets of San Francisco after defeating the Mutos. When he reawakened and headed to sea, it felt like a massive triumph. Godzilla vs. Gigan was the first Godzilla film to truly nail the concept of creating creating high stakes for the titular monster. While Godzilla did lose a couple of his early Showa films, that was when he was the villain. It's to be expected. But after Godzilla turned hero, he faced increasingly unimpressive threats with the exception of Hedorah. Godzilla vs. Gigan amplifies the stakes by having Godzilla take on two primary opponents at once. His ally in battle is less than optimal against Steven Ghidorah alone, a threat which the viewer already knows Godzilla needs backup to take down. As if that wasn't bad enough, Gigan is a powerhouse with a deadly design and the brute strength to back it up. Gigan was the first Godzilla villain that made him bleed and was able to take him out completely. It's this struggle to overcome the obstacle that engages viewers and makes the film work in the first place. It's only because of the massive pain Godzilla has endured to this point that viewers are generally able to overlook the random power-up he gets at the destruction of Godzilla Tower, which is a really contrived plot point. The reason people still regard Godzilla vs. Gigan as one of the more exciting and nostalgic entries in the series isn't because of its low production value or uninspired plotline, it's because the film gets you to worry about Godzilla and makes the kaiju action all the more rewarding as a result. It is the fear for Godzilla himself that amplifies this movie and that is lacking in so many entries. I hope that moving forward, people can accept a Godzilla who might lose a battle or two, so that when he does overcome those losses and conquer the villains, it can be all the more meaningful, exciting, and memorable. Who knows, maybe this decision alone, one of the oldest and most effective tools in a storyteller's arsenal, can help elevate even the most lackluster of films into an all-time classic. Thank you so much for watching, I really hope you enjoyed. Please let me know what you think of this down below. What do you think of Godzilla vs. Gigan? Does it resonate with you the way it does for me and so many others? I would love to hear your thoughts. And what are your thoughts on a Godzilla who has to really struggle to overcome his obstacles? What's more interesting, a Godzilla who has to take on an opponent he's never met before that might very well defeat him in battle, or Godzilla taking on an opponent we've been told he's defeated multiple times in the past and has had no problem with? As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below, where you can get early access to videos, access to the Discord community, and more. That's the most direct way to support this channel and to make sure that I can continue to make videos like this for you. Thank you all for watching, I hope you enjoyed, I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man, out.